In 1958, the physicist Freeman Dyson wrote in a letter that there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamed of in our present-day science, and we will only find them by going out and looking for them. It was the dawn of the space age, and Dyson and his colleagues were designing a huge nuclear spaceship to be launched at Saturn's moon, Enceladus. They chose Enceladus because of its unique possibility of having extraterrestrial life. Their mission never got off the ground, but more than 60 years later, Enceladus is still a beacon of possibility for finding life elsewhere. I'm Wyatt Murphy-Kangas, and I'm deeply interested in the possibility of finding life elsewhere in the universe. As a result, I've done a lot of research about extraterrestrial life, how to look for it, and the origins of life here on Earth. I've read books, listened to talks by experts, and read relevant journal articles. I won't make extraordinary claims about how there has to be alien life out there. I'll only present the information as to why there might be. Today, we're going to talk about the possibility of finding life in the solar system, and specifically on Saturn's moon, Enceladus. First, we'll learn what characteristics to look for when searching for life. Second, we'll see why Enceladus is such a promising candidate. And lastly, we'll learn about future missions and how they will go about looking for life. So, let's learn about what some of the building blocks are for life. First thing is that life needs some sort of energy source to metabolize. And metabolism is the process of an organism taking energy from the environment, processing it, and using that energy to do work. The first and perhaps most obvious way that an organism can get energy is directly from the sun. And here on Earth, plants do that via photosynthesis. And a study by NASA scientist Chris McKay about the minimum amount of sunlight needed to do photosynthesis in a Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences article said, quote, "Even at the orbit of Pluto, light levels exceed this value by a factor of 100. So not very much solar energy or sunlight is necessary to do photosynthesis. Another form of energy can be chemical. It can come from chemical reactions on the planet or moon. And this is something that's probably necessary because before life is life, presumably it's just some sort of complicated chemical reaction. So if you don't have any of those chemical reactions going on, then that's not a place that's going to eventually give rise to life. Another thing that seems to be necessary for life is liquid water. Here on Earth, every life form we've ever discovered needs water to survive. But why is it so necessary? According to a Harvard University online article by PhD students Molly Sargent and David Utter, quote, "Water's extensive capability to dissolve a variety of molecules has earned the designation of the universal solvent, and it is this ability that makes water such an invaluable life-sustaining force. On a biological level, water's role as a solvent helps cells transport and use substances like oxygen and nutrients. So, due to its chemical properties, water can break down molecules and use the energy locked up in them, and also transport molecules. Another reason why water is key is that cells in an aquatic environment are surrounded by water, and they need water on the inside of the cell to maintain their pressure. They have water pushing in on them from all sides, and if they didn't have water on the inside to balance that out, they would just collapse in on themselves, and that's shown in the diagram. So now that we've seen that water and energy are two key features of life, let's find out why Dyson was so enamored with Enceladus in particular. Enceladus looks like a frozen wasteland, but beneath ice that is in some places 25 miles thick, there's an environment that might sustain life. It has a global subsurface liquid water ocean, which means that there's the rocky core and the icy crust in between this, around the whole globe, is an ocean of liquid water. So how is that able to happen? Wouldn't it be too cold? According to Dr. Isumu Matsuyama, a planetary scientist at the University of Arizona, quote, "Gravitational tides produced by a giant planet like Jupiter or Saturn on an orbiting moon are powerful enough to warm the moon by frictional heating. So this is the rocky core rubbing against the icy exterior produces enough energy and enough heat to actually turn that ice into liquid water. So scientists had long suspected that Enceladus had an ocean, but it wasn't until the Cassini probe flew by and took samples from plumes shooting up into the atmosphere, and they found salts in those samples, and that was what confirmed it. According to NASA planetary scientist Kevin Hand, quote, "Salts are a harbinger of water-rock interaction, liquid water leaching through silicates. That gives me a large degree of confidence that we're actually sampling plumes that are connected to a liquid water ocean below." So the only way you'd find salts in water is if they're interacting with rock, with an ocean floor, which is why we have salt water on our oceans on Earth and why we know that there must be oceans on Enceladus. So there's a liquid water ocean, but we need some source of interesting chemistry, which on Enceladus comes in the form of hydrothermal vents, which look like underwater geysers. And those are shown in the picture in the slide, and how they work is water seeps down into the ground where it comes into contact with superheated rock and magma, and that heats up the water, which dissolves some of those rocks and minerals around it, and then it gets shot back up to above the ocean floor, and that's where you get those big plumes, and that's superheated water along with all different kinds of minerals. So it's a very dynamic environment with lots of chemical interactions going on, a great place for life. And they were discovered in 1977 here on Earth in an article by Dr. William Martin in Nature Reviews Microbiology. He says, quote, "This discovery had an immediate impact on the hypotheses about the origin of life, because it was recognized that the vent systems were chemically reactive environments that constituted suitable conditions for sustained prebiotic syntheses." So this means there's so much chemical processing and reacting going in this environment that it seems like a likely place that might give rise to life on Enceladus. So it has these liquid oceans. It has the hydrothermal vents. This is all very exciting. Dyson hinted at the unknowns in the universe and how we have to find them out by exploration. And going to Enceladus is not just a fun thought experiment. It could happen in the next 20 years. A team from Johns Hopkins University has a proposed mission sending out their Orbalander to Enceladus, and it is called Orbalander because it is an orbiter and lander, so it'll go out there, orbit Enceladus, and then instead of shooting off a sub-module to go land on the surface, it just transforms into a lander. And it's nuclear powered and can live for up to a year and a half on the surface of Enceladus, and it won't be able to go directly down into the ocean, but it can sample the water from the plumes that shoot up into the atmosphere, which are from the ocean, and detect biosignatures that way. And what that means is basically there are certain molecules that you would only find if they were produced by a living organism, and so they devise chemical tests to test for those molecules, and if they find them, then that means there's probably life there. Shannon McKenzie is one of the leading scientists on that experiment, and she says, "It would be great if there was an instrument called the Life Detection Instrument, and after feeding it a sample, the instrument yielded an unambiguous result whether life was detected. But such a thing does not exist, so we came up with 6 different instruments that provide indications of several different biosignatures." So that's how that process works. Another team from the German university RWTH Aachen is also planning a mission with slightly different technology. They're using something they've developed called the ice mole, which is a robot that delves down beneath the surface, melting the ice as it goes 100 meters down near one of these plumes, and it searches for biosignatures there. And it does it that way because when these molecules come into contact with the atmosphere, it's extremely cold and almost a vacuum on the surface of Enceladus. So those molecules might be degraded and you might not get a good result. So they do it beneath the surface to have the best experimental results. So we don't know the necessary conditions for life, but we can make educated guesses, which are water and energy sources are probably the best. Enceladus is a great candidate because of its global ocean and hydrothermal vents. And in the end, the only way to find life on Enceladus is with a mission, and the Orblander and the Ice Mole missions are both candidates. As we continue our search for life beyond Earth, our chances of finding life only increase. It might not be the huge nuclear spaceship that Dyson originally imagined, but with missions going to Enceladus in the next 20 years, our days of being the solar system's only life might be numbered.